So the headline is Microsoft is retiring SMS and voice authentication. And there are some really aggressive deadlines. So I wanted to delve into that a bit more. First, we'll have a look at the announcement because the announcement might not mean what you think it does. So quite a bit to unpack there. We'll also have a look at those deadlines, those dates, what you need to do next. And finally, we'll have a look at some of the recommendations because Microsoft do provide some good recommendations in how to deal with this big change. So we'll have a look at that. So to get started, let's jump into the announcement. Okay, let's have a look at that announcement in a bit more detail because there's quite a bit to unpack. Passkeys by default and retirement of Microsoft provided SMS and voice authentication. First section, passkeys by default. So important on there, there's no mention of the authenticator app. So you will still be able to use that. But what Microsoft want people to do is to start registering passkeys, whether that's on their phone, whether that's with a hardware token. And when you sign in, that'll be your default. Now, thinking about that a bit more, a lot of people have Authenticator app installed on their phone, which is great. And they'll also be using their phone for passkeys, and that'll be the default. So it's a clever way of Microsoft moving people away from the Authenticator app into passkeys without people realizing that there's this big change. And we all know that passkeys are a lot more secure. They are phishing resistant, etc. So clever little bit of work by Microsoft on that. Let's have a look at some of the dates. So 1st of September, passkeys become the default authentication experience. So once users are registered, they'll start using passkeys. And then the big red one. So 1st of February, Microsoft provided SMS and voice will stop working. Let's go further down. So prepare for transition to passkeys. Find users enabled for SMS and voice. So most organizations that I work with, SMS and voice is still enabled for all users. Not ideal, but it is what it is. If there have been some changes, you can run the PowerShell script that'll tell you in your environment who's currently enabled for SMS and voice. And then some information moving to passkeys. So two types of passkeys, sync passkeys and device-bound passkeys. So you might want to evaluate which users you want to use different types of passkeys. Probably users, ideally, you don't want them to use sync passkeys because remember, sync passkeys, they are stored in the cloud, and if somebody gets access to that cloud account, something like that, potentially there is some risk to that. So privileged users, VIP users, etc., ideally push those down the device-bound passkey route. Let's have a look further down. So number 3, evaluate telecoms providers. So again, as I mentioned earlier, there are going to be some use cases where SMS and voice will still be needed. So think of frontline workers, etc. And Microsoft isn't taking all SMS and voice away, but they will, as it says, going forward, they'll be via a telecoms company, and therefore there will be some charges associated to that. So every SMS, every voice, there'll be, presume, a very small charge, but it's something to note. Also, with all of that information, important to make sure you go through your conditional access policies. If there is anything that specifically mentions a voice SMS, you might have to have some action on that. And let's have a quick look at that GitHub page, and I'll put that in the description. And what do we have here? There are some prerequisites, and then you can run it. And an example output, it'll tell you if SMS and or voice have been enabled in your tenant, and it'll tell you which users are included and not included. Okay, let's do a quick recap. Why are Microsoft making these changes? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One, we know SMS and voice aren't very secure. they aren't phishing resistant, and passkeys are. So that's one. Two, let's not forget that Microsoft analyzes something like 1 trillion signals a day. So with those signals, they can see what people are currently using, what the risks are, and they can also push people to become more secure. You probably also find, to be honest, that the uptake in passkeys isn't where Microsoft would want it to be. So this is a way to push people away from less secure to more secure solutions. We also looked at the paths. So number one, yeah, you will be able to use sync passkeys or device-bound passkeys, and then also, if need be, those select use cases, you can also use SMS and voice. If you do decide to use SMS and voice, make sure that they're assigned to a select users that need that features and not the rest of your users who can use passkeys. Communication stages. So number one, as in everything, awareness, making sure that users are aware of the changes and those deadlines. They are tight. Whether they'll be moved, we'll wait and see. But currently, we have to go on what Microsoft publishes, so they are tight. So getting the awareness out there, getting the action, getting those users to actually start registering passkeys, etc., important. And then also setting reminders. So you might want to set reminders in a couple of months' time. You know, it's going to be towards the end of the year. There's going to be a lot of things going on, Christmas, New Year, etc. So people will stop. People will be going on holiday. So try and get everything done before then. And let's have a quick look at those dates one last time. So 1st of August, there is a bit of an opt-out. So if you don't want people to start registering for some reason, you can do that. Ideally, you don't want to do that. 1st of September, passkeys become the default. 18th September, you can start looking at telecoms options. But a weird one, you'd think that they'd have that before passkeys become default, but yeah, that is what it is. 30th of October, you can start looking at, or at least looking at those providers, testing it out. And then again, that big deadline of 1st of February 2027, where you'll no longer be able to use Microsoft provided SMS and voice. There we go. So hopefully that's been a bit informative, found it useful, and I'll see you in the next video.